Welcome to ILTV's Israel Weekly. Our main topics today, Jewish terrorism, and we'll discuss the latest political updates for the upcoming elections. I'm Ladar Gravei-Lazi, and joining me in the studio to discuss are Director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Martin Sherman, former head of Israeli Air Force Intelligence, Brigadier General Ram Shmueli, Meretz member of Knesset, Mossi Raz, and strategic advisor, Yoram Dori. After over a week of speculation, a gag order was lifted today, revealing that the 5 Jewish minors arrested by Israeli security forces are suspects in the murder of Palestinian woman Aisha Ravi, who was stoned to death while driving her car in October. Ravi was driving along with her husband beside her and was injured when the stones struck her in the head. The Shin Bet said that the 5 Jewish minors are also suspected for other Jewish terror offenses. Additionally, it was revealed that the minors are all students at Pri Haaretz Yeshiva in Rechalim. Security forces this past week arrested 3 of the teens who were detained and only allowed access to a lawyer after a week. Under Israeli law, authorities can delay access to an attorney for terrorism suspects. 2 additional minors were arrested over the weekend. Meanwhile, on Saturday night, hundreds protested outside the president of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and leading religious Zionist Rabbi Chaim Drukman published a video calling on the prime minister to release the suspects, saying they are not terrorists. Okay, so let's jump right in today. The details of this case were just released a few moments ago. So already we're seeing, some on the left coming out and calling for condemnation of this attack, and those on the right are already coming out and maybe criticizing the way that it was handled from the beginning. So I'd like to hear from you first, what are your thoughts?
I'm on the right, and I condemn this kind of terrorism. It's a threat for all of us, including it's a threat for the settler in Judea and Samaria, which are lawful citizens, part of Israeli society, and these extremists threaten the stability in the region. So I condemn it. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, to say that now we can say that they are murderers when they throw stones, let's wait a little bit and see what's happened there. So yes, it's a threat. We have to condemn Jewish terrorism as well as Arab terrorism, but let's wait a little bit.
Okay.
Dr. Sherman, yeah.
I'll ask, because you've been critical of the term Jewish terrorism in the past, so what are your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, everybody condemns both the act of homicide with this Palestinian woman and the Duma attack with 3 Palestinians, or a member of the Dawabsha family, who were burned to death. But there are many troubling things about the way it's been handled. For instance, in the Duma affair, it's been 4 years since then. After a year, after 6 months, they apprehended someone and apparently extracted a confession from them, but there's still been no conviction. And the troubling thing about Duma is that the confession is not only wildly improbable, but it's completely at odds with eyewitness accounts. To believe that the suspect in Duma actually committed the act he's accused of, you have to believe that he walked alone at night 5 kilometers through hostile territory, penetrated into a hostile village, didn't attack something on the fringes, to the center of the village, perpetrated a very noisy attack, painted Hebrew letters on the wall, and then managed to escape without anyone noticing him, and vanished for 6 months until the Shin Bet managed to somehow put their hands on him, not because they had evidence, but because they had intelligence. And the same thing is here. One doesn't know whether there was any evidence or whether there's intelligence which throws a suspicion on them. And the question is not now whether they should be punished if they perpetrated the act. Of course, if they perpetrated the act, they should be punished. The question is, why do you need extrajudicial measures for it? And I think Ram is wrong when he tries to equate between Arab terrorism and Jewish terrorism. You can call a Bengal tiger and a stray tabby cat a feline carnivorous quadruped, but the fact that you can give them the same name doesn't mean to say that they are the same. The same as a field mouse and a raging bull elephant are both quadrupeds, but they're not the same things, and you don't need the same measures to deal with them. So I think that we should all condemn acts of homicide, but I don't think that we condone use of extrajudicial measures to deal with groups that are clearly not the same order of magnitude as Hamas or Hezbollah or the Islamic Jihad.
Mm-hmm. So Martin is drawing some parallels between Duma and the latest incident, but he's saying that we shouldn't compare Jewish terrorism with Arab terrorism. Mossi, what are your thoughts?
First, I don't want to compare. There are differences. But you know, when you try to compare, you have to remember that all these occupied territories are under Israeli army, and the Israeli army is the one who actually in this territory forcing the law, using a lot of violence, which I cannot call terrorism. Sometimes justified, and sometimes this violence is not justified. Of course, if you want to say that the terrorism of the Hamas is more than the terrorism of the settlers, I would agree with you. But I guess if Palestinians will rule Israel, Jewish terrorism will be more than Islamic terrorism.
What's the point? Does that even mean?
I just saying, you know, reality. I know that you don't want to look at the reality, but this is what I'm...
How many foreign powers support the Hilltop Youth? Qatar, Iran. I can give you 5 or 6 names of
ruling here. They are not ruling here. Now, if we talk about this attack, we have to understand this is not something that is extraordinary, and even this terror attack in Duma was not that unique. In the last year, more than 500 terror activities.
Something else about the Duma attack wasn't unique. 5 or 6 other houses have been burned down in Duma because of interclan feuding.
But
so all of a sudden, this one was Jewish terrorists?
And again, almost every night. The only thing that was different in Duma, or in this case, is that somebody was killed. But they stone every night, and they throw Molotov battles every night, or not every night, but very rarely. They do that all the time, and we close our eyes in the same place.
That means the Hilltop Youth is like
in the same place that they killed Aisha El-Rabi. They
stoned. Don't know who killed her.
They stoned. I don't know who. But somebody killed her.
Maybe Arabs by mistake. Maybe Arabs by mistake.
Maybe Arab by mistake. In the same place, a few days ago, the Palestinian Prime Minister was stoned and almost injured. Maybe Arabs again by mistake, but I do know that one who follow what happens in the occupied territories know that settlers throw more stones than Palestinians. Amazing, but this is the truth right now.
Okay, so Mossi here is echoing something that many politicians on the left have come out and said. They've criticized the right, saying that they're sort of continually giving into and even backing and empowering these extremist elements in Judea and Samaria. Yoram, what are your thoughts on this?
Now, I dislike the use of Jewish terrorism and Arab terrorism. Terrorism is terrorism and homicide is homicide, and this distinction leads us for a double standard, that you are judging in one way a Jewish homicide and you are judging in another way Palestinian or Israeli, Arab.
Because they're two different phenomena.
And that's why I am against this distinction between Jewish terrorism and Arab terrorism. I'm against terrorism. I'm against homicide. I'm not judging a terrorist or a murderer according to his nationality.
Are you against organized crime?
He can be a Jewish murderer, he can be a Muslim murderer, he can be a Christian murderer, but he is a murderer, and he has to be judged and put to trial as a murderer. Not as a Jewish one, not as a Christian, and neither as a Muslim.
So, final thoughts, because we have to move on to our next topic.
That misses the point.
Martin and then Ram, please. Yes.
Because there should be no difference between Arab blackmail and Jewish blackmail. There should be no difference between Arab rape and Jewish rape. But there's a difference in the phenomenon of terrorism. Arab terrorism is backed by foreign governments who are sovereign enemies of the Israeli state, and Jewish hooliganism or vandalism or hate crimes are not.
Murder.
Okay.
I think
Lam, yes, let's hear from
I
Lam.
I think that
Final thoughts.
any comments from the rabbis is a mistake, because this is the way they make the image that all the settlers are against this arrest. No, all the settlers are lawful citizens of the State of Israel. And these extremists of youth that are going on the hills, we have to stop them for our interest.
But
And
why
of
do-
course,
why do you need
against
why do you
throwing
need
stones.
Why do you need
We don't
extrajudicial
need the
means?
rabbis. The rabbis made mistake when they involve in politics.
But why do you need extrajudicial measures for that? Why do you need extrajudicial measures? That's the whole point. You need extrajudicial measures against terrorist organizations backed by foreign powers. It's
This
not the same
morning I
thing.
heard the head of the Shabak, the former head of the Shabak. There is no extra measures. This is the same things that they are doing when there is something very hot, very a quick timing that you have to decide. So there is no extra measure. This is only press publication, nothing
Okay.
extra.
Great, so let's move on to our next topic. In yet another shocking surprise this election season, Labour Party leader Abi Gabay announced this past week that he was ending his partnership with Hatnuah Party leader Tzipi Livni, effectively dismantling the Zionist Union faction. The cold move came as a complete surprise to Livni and has been criticized widely in the public, with Labour dipping in polls to an all-time low, and with members of his own party calling to replace Gabay. The move has now also fractured the left, who had hoped to unite to overthrow Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Meanwhile, the right also continues to face challenges, as many of its now fragmented parties are at risk of not passing the electoral threshold of 4 seats. And what's more, Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit has said that he will most likely announce his decision to indict Netanyahu ahead of voters going to the polling booths, which could significantly affect the outcome of the election.
קיוויתי והאמנתי שהשינוי והשותפות החדשה יובילו לצמיחה שלנו, לחיבור של ממש, לפרגון הדדי. אבל הציבור חכם, הוא רואה שזה לא מצב הדברים, והתרחק מאיתנו. אני עדיין מאמין בשותפות, אני עדיין מאמין בחיבורים, אני עדיין מאמין בלאחד מחנה גדול ומחויב לשינוי. אבל חיבורים מוצלחים מצריכים חברות, עמידה בסיכומים ונאמנות לדרך. לצערי הרב, זה לא קורה בשותפות הזאת, ולכן אני בוחר שוב פעם בציבור. ציפי, אני מאחל לך הצלחה בבחירות, בכל מפלגה שלא תהיי. אנחנו נמשיך להילחם ולהיות מחויבים לשינוי שעם ישראל רוצה. באתי לפוליטיקה עבור העם, ואשאר תמיד בצד שלו. תודה רבה.
אני ברשותכם לא אגיב, אקבל את החלטותיי. תודה רבה.
So Yoam, I'd like to start with you because you were a long-time advisor to Shimon Peres of the Labour Party.
Spokesperson of the Labour Party.
And the spokesperson of
Under
the Labour
Rabin,
Party.
Peres and Barak.
Exactly. So,
It's not the same party.
what are your thoughts on this Gabay
First of
announcement?
all, it's not
and-
the same party.
Okay.
Let's start with it. But you know, Mr. Gabay is criticized by the manner. He was not polite, etc. I don't see the issue in this way.
Okay.
You know, Ben Gurion with Sharet, Shamir with Sharir, etc. were at least not more polite than Mr. Gabay was regarding Tzipi Livni. The only question is whether it will bring more voters for those who want a new government of the State of Israel. That's the state of mind of the Labour Party, of Meretz, maybe Yair Lapid, and maybe Benny Gantz. I don't know what Mr. Gantz has in his mind. But they want more voters. And does this act bring more voters or not? That is the only question. I am against blocks because I think that the competition within the same camp, brings more voters. Let's assume that the coalition of today, which has 61 seats in the Knesset, and if you want to add, you can add the 5 seats of Lieberman, it's 66. Let's assume that they are running for the next election in one block. Do you think they will gain 66 seats in the Knesset? Never. Because of the competition between themselves are bringing more and more voters. So I am for more and more voters for this camp, and this split doesn't hurt me and doesn't do anything for me.
Although we have seen recent polls have shown a dip in
according all the public opinion polls, I think that Hillary Clinton is 1 year the President of United States. Mr. Herzog is the Prime Minister of Israel. And I worked for 26 years with Mr. Shimon Peres. So till now, maybe he will be the Prime Minister of the State of Israel. So
not giving much credence. Not giving much credence to polls.
And reality is reality.
Okay.
These are very strange elections because the results will probably be determined more by who does not get into the Knesset rather than who does. And by that I mean that many parties, especially on the right, may not get through the threshold. And we saw what happened in the 1992, 1991 elections, 92, when the right wing actually got more votes than the left wing, but didn't manage to get a majority in the Knesset because many small factions were disqualified because they didn't get enough votes to get through the threshold. So I think that's the most important thing, whether the small right-wing factions will be able to show a sort of a cooperative spirit and at least band together for the elections. They may break up after the elections, but they should band together before the elections. But in many ways, this election is an insult to the Israeli electorate, its intelligence, because it's really about nothing. It's about whether they can displace Netanyahu in the courts rather than at the polls. And the people, you don't even know what they're for. You have Benny Gantz, who's the dark horse of the election, and you don't know whether he's for forcible transfer of the Arabs or a state of all the citizens. You don't know whether he's extreme right, extreme left, or center. And he's already in the second or third largest faction according to the polls. You have strange phenomena like the former defense minister Boger Ya'alon, who's supposed to be a hawk, talking to Yair Lapid, who once said that we'll see Palestinian flags flying over public buildings in Jerusalem. So it's basically about nothing. It's just sort of a jigsaw puzzle trying to put things together to see how they fit. And
so Dr. Sherman saying that this election is about nothing. Mossi, do you agree with that?
Of course, I don't agree with that. I think that there are differences between the parties. I do agree that many parties think the same. And then it's just a question of the person. But there are questions on the table. The first one, of course, is how do we look at Prime Minister and the corruption of the Prime Minister. The second one is how committed we are to democracy. We see again and again attacks on democracy.
What attacks on democracy?
Third, of course, the question of the occupation and the question of the one will call it security, okay, but our relations with the Palestinians. I think that in all those issues, there are differences between parties. I will agree that many parties are the same, and the only difference between them is persons. And I think that maybe. And we see that abroad too, but in Israel more than everywhere, I think. People want to vote to somebody, to somebody that they know. They know his name or her name, and they don't really care even what does he think or what is.
Well, that's what I said. It's not about ideas.
I say it's when I talk about 100%. There are people who still vote for what they think. People who vote for the Likud party, for the Labour Party, for Meretz, for the right wing. But
what does the Labour Party think? What are they running on?
I think that people who vote for the Labour Party, they think about the Labour Party as an alternative that is not corrupted like the Likud, that is supporting negotiations and compromise with the Palestinians, like two-state solution, and social democratic society. I think this is what they have in their mind. Not necessarily that this is the truth. By the way, it's not that far from the truth.
They want to bring Barak. Barak
we
is
have
a great
to
champion.
wrap up, so I'd like to hear Ram's thoughts as well.
There are two subjects, by surprise, that are not so relevant to this election. First of all, the military threat to Israel. As a general in the Israeli Air Force, I can tell you that there are many threats, but we can handle them. Secondly, the Palestinian issue, we are not going to solve it in the next couple of years. So I recommend the parties, and I'm from the right, I recommend the parties say what you think about education, about health, about transport, about environment. This is what I'm waiting for them to do it. And by the way, the new party, the new right, by Ayelet Shaked and Naftali Bennett, I think they are the promise. I think they are the promise, as Kahlon, Kulanu, because they are from the right. They're not going to go to two-state solution, but they are going to make change in other areas. I'm waiting for them to say what they think about education, what they think about the prosperity of the people of Israel. We have kind of a window of opportunity. The military threat, yes, we have many threats, but we can overcome. The Palestinian issue is not going to solve because they don't speak with each other. The Gazan people and the Hamas with the... So it's a waste of time to discuss those issues. I even can discuss it with Mossi, and we will agree that nothing will happen in the next couple of years. Okay, nothing will happen unless you will be the prime minister. So the issue is now what is the prosperity and building something different in this country. We are a startup nation. We are a startup nation, yes. But let's put startup nation in education.
What's the difference between Bennett and Gabay?
Big difference. Big difference. The left are talking about the international ideas, and the right is speaking about identity, Jewish identity. It's big different. I can tell you, and it's important. Those different can. In those things, we can find right and left. In the issue of the Palestinian, nothing will happen. I'm sure about it.
The question is not right and left.
Last thought, and then we really have to wrap it up.
Last comment. Most of the Israeli voters vote in accord of confidence who will bring them more security. Security and security and security.
Good, but
not
nothing.
Education, unfortunately, not what will happen in the kindergarten of the children, only security. They want personal security, even not national security.
Personal security,
but personal
inside.
security.
I know, I'm the head of the Shomer HaChadash, so I know what is personal security. But according to the Lamas, 87%...
They thought in the last election that Mr. Netanyahu can give them more personal security than Mr. Herzog, so he won the election. I don't know what will happen in the coming election. Those parties who will concentrate in education, in culture, in health, we lose elections.
It is a national security issue.
Right.
The education is national security.
Gentlemen, that is all the time we have today for ILTV's Israel Weekly. I'd like to thank our guests, Dr. Martin Sherman, Brigadier General Ram Shmueli, Mossi Raz, and Yoram Doriv. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News, on Twitter at ILTV News, and on our website at iltv.tv. I'm Ladar Gavelazi. Thanks for watching.